So that's the thing, right? So we have these web apps, and we want to be able to use them because they're good because we can access stuff anywhere. But the problem is that right now, we can't access these stuff when we're offline, right? And we do have instances where we're offline or like semi-offline, and so that would be like when you're in class and there's shitty wireless, when you're on a plane, although apparently they're adding online to some planes, when you're on a bus. So at Google we have shuttles, and the wireless on the shuttles is also kind of iffy, right?
Iffy wireless on the shuttles.
Yeah, it's iffy. So like, you know, it goes up and down, right? So there's a lot of situations where you want to just be able to have stuff work offline and have it work well, and not have to constantly like use a desktop app and then sync it, right? I don't want to have to be writing everything in Microsoft Word and then writing something that's going to go sync it to a server. That's too much for me to remember. But other than that, like, we like web apps, right? You know, they have pretty good UI, and then we can collaborate with people. That's actually the coolest part of web apps today, is that a lot of them are collaborative, and that's been a huge benefit with like stuff like Google Documents, Google Calendar, etc. So the problems is that a browser inherently accesses online data. As soon as we go offline, you know, we're kind of done, right? Even if we go just a little bit offline, that can lead to problems as well. It doesn't get like our last edit, right? Responsiveness, so if it's constantly going to and forth from the server, syncing like, think about it, syncing like every other change to the server like every second because I want to make sure I get it all. That's a lot of requests it's sending to a server, right? If you think about it, it might be better if it would kind of like store up like 10 minutes of edits in the local drive and then sync it back to the server when it's done, right? The only problem with that is that you can't do that now without Gears, because you don't know if the person's still going to have the web page open 10 minutes from now, and if you're still going to have that data, right? Because data, as soon as you leave the web page, with normal JavaScript and stuff, it'll leave. Like, you can store a little bit in the cookies, but not much. And then computing power. So if you've ever had an app that you ever guys get the little alert that says, this script is taking longer than usual to complete, would you like to continue script or abort? That's a really horrible message to get, because you're like, okay, so how much do I want this thing to work? Do I take the risk it'll shut down the browser? Do I go for it?
You don't really know if it's actually in an infinite loop.
Yeah.
It could be in an infinite loop, like really bad JavaScript, or if it's just taking a little bit extra time. So,
no, I think if it's an infinite loop, it just kills the browser. I'm pretty sure I've done that.
I've definitely seen that error more than once.
Yeah. I'm really good at doing infinite loops. So then there's computing power. So, you know, we have good CPUs, but they're not necessarily being taken advantage of the most in browsers. So what do we need, right? So the first thing we need is think about a web page, right? So the web page has like the UI, it has like the CSS that it uses, it has the JavaScript that it uses to do the logic. Okay, so those are like our resources. And then we also have the data, right? So Google Docs there's this UI with like the folder icons and sorting and all that, but then there's also like the actual documents, okay? So we need a way to be able to, first of all, just get those resources, the HTML and the JavaScript. We need a way just to have those cached so that we can get to them when we're offline, right? And that's why Gears introduces something called the local server, and that will store all of our resources locally. And what that basically does is, so you know how we talked about the HTTP protocol, right? When you enter a URL in the browser, it does an HTTP GET on that URL. What the local server does, it kind of intercepts that GET. It's like, like it gets a URL and it's like, oh, wait a second, I've been asked to store this. And then it's like, here you go, here's the version of the file. So before it even gets to requesting it from the server, it says, oh, I already have it. You don't even need to go to the server, and gives you the file. So that's pretty cool, right? So that means, like, you know, in Firefox, when you're like working offline or whatever, you'll get that error that says, you know, this page can't be displayed, you're working offline. Even if you go to, with Gears stuff, if you go to File Work Offline, and then you go to a page that's using Gears to get its resources stored, you'll just see the page, because it doesn't even know that it couldn't get to the server. The next thing we need is just to be able to store the data. Now we could just maybe store that in some like really big JavaScript array, but the thing is that a lot of people in their web apps are actually storing the data in some kind of backend database. And a lot of people are using MySQL or SQLite or Postgres. I didn't know how to pronounce that. Thank you. I was going to say PostgreSQL.
I used to do that.
Yeah. Well, we learn every day. So like a lot of people have databases in the backend, right? And they could just kind of convert their database schema into a JavaScript object schema, or we could build in a database that can be accessed by the browser. And so that's what Gears does. It actually uses a SQL-like database and lets you create. So from your JavaScript, you can actually create tables and do selects, do updates, do inserts. How many people are actually familiar with like SQL databases? All right, sweet, good amount. That's awesome. And so the last thing we need, we're talking about how sometimes you get that unresponsive script warning. So we want a way to be able to take advantage of computing power without paying the browser. So we have something called worker pool, which kind of implements multi-threading in JavaScript. So you can go off and send a bunch of workers and tell them to do stuff and have them come back to you when they're done and not worry about hanging up the browser. So it's pretty cool. Now, the question is, like, you give these tools, but we didn't give you, like, an automatic framework, like, this is a tool, and this will always sync your data for you, and it will sync when the user comes. Because the problem is that syncing is not really intuitive how it should be done. Like, every app kind of does syncing different, right? You might sync, like, as soon as you go to the page, and then every 2 minutes after that, or you might sync only when somebody presses a sync button, right? And like, that might be better. Like, for depending on the app, either technique might be better, right? So we don't actually do that for you, like give you that logic, but we give you sample code and say like, oh, here's some possible ways, right? So my personal preference is to have like a seamless transition between online and offline, so that the user doesn't have to think about it. And then, so the way to implement that would be to just try and sync like every 2 minutes, see if it happens, whatever. Always grab data when you can, and always store it locally when you can. Grab it from the local place whenever you can. So I remember the seamless transition. Some people do it differently. Google Reader did it a little differently, where they actually have a button where you say oh, I'm going into offline mode now. And so you can do that. There are some advantages to having an offline mode, because for some things, offline mode actually works a lot faster. Because think about it, so there was a good demo where it's actually searching through Dig articles. And if you usually use Dig and search through Dig, I don't know if you've tried it, but it can be kind of slow. So what this does, it uses the Dig API to go and grab like a bunch of Dig articles, go and store them in the database, and it took advantage of the SQL full text search to make it really, really fast to search the Dig articles. And in that mode, you kind of want to just say like, okay, go and grab everything, and I'm going to come back in 1 minute once you're done, and then spend like the next hour just searching through these articles and not touching the server at all. So in that way, it's kind of cool to be completely offline because you guarantee that you're not trying to make any calls to the server, and you're doing everything on the client side, which is usually pretty fast. So why we did it this way? We talked about the different spectrums, right? There's a desktop app, which is one way of being offline, and then there's the web. So this pretty much comes closer to the website side of it. And we're working on supporting it in all the browsers. I think we actually do pretty much support Safari now. So what it is, it's actually a browser plugin. So when you download it, it'll download it for all the browsers that it works on your computer. And then there's just this JavaScript file that you include when you're creating the Google Gears app that will give you access to all the functions that you need to interact with the local server and the database, as well as the worker pool. So here's just examples. Like this is the normal architecture for an Ajax app, right? So we have the client, and this is like the HTML and JavaScript, the UI, right? And then we do an XML HTTP request to the internet. We get the data, it sends it back. Okay, so then we have Gears, right? So here, it gets a little more complicated, and it's kind of interesting actually when you're designing the Gears app to sit down and think like what would be the best technique, because it does vary. So what I always do is that as soon as I get data, so I go to the internet, I get data. As soon as I get data, I store it in the local database, and then I always display it from the local database, right? So there's never any interaction directly between here and here. So that's cool because because the thing about this, you always know that your local database is there, right? It may not have data in it if you haven't gotten any data from the internet yet, but you know it's always there. If you constantly try and display from the internet first, that may not exist. So the page loads, display from the local database what you have, and then you go out to the internet and try and get like the new refreshed data. So the consequence is that sometimes the user might see out-of-date data for a second or so, but you know, if you think about it, that's kind of better, right? So I would rather see, like, if I'm offline, I'd rather see the outdated data than see something trying to like access the internet and fail. Like, look, just show me what you know, right? Like, I'm okay with you only knowing what happened 10 minutes ago. That's fine. So here's an example of how Google Reader did it. If you actually download Gears and use Reader, you can see this little icon here. So the way that you do it, they do it there, is that you actually just click on the icon and it'll download like 2,000 items, and then you'll just be able to seamlessly click through them. And I think it actually works faster. So if you actually let this complete, you'll actually be able to browse your items faster because it's gotten all the resources and it doesn't need to go to the web to get them anymore. So that's a good way. Like if you're about to have like a shuttle ride, yeah.
Do they grab the images or?
I think they actually did do. I think they did do the images. I don't actually use it. Do you?
I haven't used it.
Yeah, but I think they do. There is a hack to get images. It's a little harder because so with a local server, you can only actually store stuff that's on your server. But I believe that since they proxy the images, that they're able to store them. And there's other ways to do it too. So our colleague, who's also a UC alum, he actually supports Google Gears now. So he's on our team, and he wrote a Wikipedia Greasemonkey plugin that will take any Wikipedia article offline. And actually, I have that on my computer, and that stores the images as well. And he did a little bit of a hack for that. So I can show that to you. I'm not sure if it would store the videos. It may not do that. Another example, this is Remember the Milk. They actually managed to, we announced Gears, and then they had their offline mode like a week later. So apparently they just spent like a couple days hacking, and then they put it in. So that's pretty cool, right? Because they got it faster than a lot of Google products, because we're still working on ours, right? But they're not as big as our products. But they have a similar little icon here, offline. This is pretty useful because tasks, so this is a task site, and it's such a really good task site. It integrates really well with a lot of Google products, actually. They have like even maps, so you can like map your tasks, and then you can like figure out like the optimal route and stuff. And so that's pretty useful because, like, you know, you want to know what you need to do, and you're like, shoot, I don't have the internet, now I can't do anything because I forgot. So it should make you more productive, right? Make you remember your milk at least. All right, so since we're like meta, this presentation actually is a Gears app, just in case our internet went down. I haven't captured any of the files yet, but I'll do it right now. So let's see, it actually says capturing. So
Looks like it says Turing to me.
well, we like Turing machines too, yeah.
This is true.
Wait a sec.
You're polluting my local server.
I know. That's another thing about Gears is that it's designed for like kind of laptop use because it stores, so it does actually store things on the hard drive, right? So if you have multiple people using like the same account on the same laptop, I wouldn't recommend them using stuff with Gears because they could probably go into each other's stuff and look at it. But if you think it most of the time when you're offline, it's not at a desktop machine. Because if you're at a desktop machine, then you probably have connection to the internet, right? So like all of these have connection to the internet. So it's definitely designed for like personal PCs. It still says capturing. We'll just see what happens. Come on. Look at my machine.
I think it's Gmail.
Oh yeah.
Well, my Gmail didn't all pretty slow.
I know, but I wanted to like live on the edge. Well, we can actually look at the. So Google Gears comes with some tools to let you like inspect the database in the local server. So we can look at. Oh yeah, you're right. We're just not online at all.
Maybe give it a few seconds.
All right. Cool. So let's see. The database name was. Shoot, I did that before. Oh, it's okay. All right, let's go next. Trying to remember my okay. Yeah, so you do have to be online at some point because the point about Gears, it can't just guess what's out there. Somebody, I guess, could write a plugin that's like, well, based on your previous viewing, we think that this is the next possible web page you're going to look at. I'm not sure how good that would be. Come on. Oh, hurt. All right. I'm trying to guess what the files are, because it probably caches them. I
This
think
one
it has to
isn't-
be registered, right?
Yeah, this one's not good.
Yeah. Wait, I'll see what the files are. Oh, it's the same thing.
But you could do yours.
My thing won't connect.
Not to the internet?
No, I mean it won't connect to the projector. Oh, you can look?
Yeah.
Sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's Android to support like a Google Gears concept.
That's good.
Yeah, I think they're working on it, right?
Yeah, Android is actually, I don't know too many specifics about Android because they like to keep, the group likes to keep to itself. But I do know that they're trying to integrate a lot of Google stuff into it, so I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. And Gears sounds familiar.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of our properties are working on Gears integration, so you should start seeing that in the coming months. More and more things, and it's not even just Google properties; it's also just properties at large. Like I know another really popular online office suite, Zoho, has already added support for Google Gears for at least one of their presentations or something. So.
Slides. Okay. All right. Slides. All right. So this is the DB query tool. So it basically, I want to get this smaller. Okay. So it basically just lets you, if you've used like something like PHP MyAdmin, it just lets you execute SQL statements on like the current database that's under the domain. So all the databases are tied to the origin, right? So this will let me query all the databases that are located like tied to the applications at this URL. So I can't check out apps like databases for other apps. So here we go. Let's check out what the tables were that we created here. Table, insert, create table, master, meta, slides. All right, let's do slides. So select star for slides. I hate this computer. Should change it.
At least mine connected to the projector.
Oh, here we go. I don't know where I just was, but it wasn't anywhere useful. All right, so let's execute this. Okay, cool. So these are all our slide titles here. So when we did like a select star, and so we're storing these all in the database. So then you could also do something like, let's see, like an update, date slides, set title equals. Wait, I have to remember your SQL sentence.
Yeah, that's right.
User ID 1.
So you're going to see number one change.
Right, and if you had a SQL syntax error, it would let you know. So this is actually a good place for like trying out SQL stuff before you put it in your code. So that's what I use it for all the time. So let's check it out again.
We didn't put the semicolon.
Well, let's see. Yeah, it worked. So so now it says hi for that slide. That's a great way of
Can you roll back?
Huh?
Can you roll back?
Yeah, let's see. Well, are we online now? Okay, so we'll go 1. Hi. So there you can see it actually grabbed it from the database now. So let's go back to 10. I guess we've got our thing back. Should we try and cache it again? Ah! Everyone cross your fingers. It might help if we do the Google dance. Just throwing it out there.
Yes.
In the
Capture.
offline mode, how exactly is the data stored inside? As in,
How is it stored, like on the hard drive?
Yeah.
So if you look at the Gears site, it'll actually tell you exactly where it's stored. I think it's under like the document settings. And I think right now they're actually storing the databases like as flat files. So you can actually go, like that's what Ben does, instead of like actually like just clearing the database and tables programmatically, he usually just goes into his hard drive and deletes them. So there's that too.
So you know, it says capture.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Is there,
It's-
are there problems for different operating systems? Or is it like that's both the same?
Wait, the JavaScript?
The Google Gears.
Are you saying like is the plugin different? Or
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they have to write the plugin differently for all like the different browsers and operating systems, but the JavaScript is the same. So for you as a developer,
It makes no difference.
yeah, it makes a difference. As long as it's something that's supported by Gears, right? So the consumers need to download Gears, you just need to use the JavaScript, and the JavaScript is actually pretty basic, especially if you know SQLite, because it's just like execute this SQLite statement, right? So we're basically changing the traditional way of designing the website, right? Oh, that's a page now, I get it. So the usual website is that we go user activity server, that's before Ajax, and then Ajax, we don't go complete to the server, we just go and get some data from Ajax, we bring back. And then when we have Gears, we go when we get the data from Gears, and then sometimes we go to the server, then we go store it into the Gears database, and then display it to the user, right? So it's a slightly different design of a website. Here we go. Yay, Google Gears stuff. All right, so the local server. So this goes a little bit more into it. There's a resource store, and there's actually a managed resource store. So remember when we were talking about when we actually like capture the resources? Okay. So the problem with that is, like, think about it, like, right? So you write your application, and you tell the computer, like, okay, so make sure that you cache all these resources when the user comes to the page so that it works offline. What happens when you update your application, right? The user will just continuously get the one that it has in the cache, right? Because it doesn't know that, like, it has no way of knowing that you updated your application, right? So that's the issue with using the resource store, is that all it does is say, okay, I'm going to capture this URL, and I'm going to capture it forever until you write some function that's going to, like, delete it. But now we have the manage resource store, and what this lets us say is, like, okay, here are all the resources for my app, right? And here's a version number. When this version number increases, go and grab the resources again. So the cool thing about that is if you're making the app, and then you go and upgrade the app, all you do is go into your manifest file, and you say, all right, the version is now 1.1, Gears would be like, oh, they want me to go and grab the resources again. So it'll go and replace it with the new stuff. So that's really important because you want to make sure that, first of all, that, because sometimes maybe what if it's getting like cached, an old cache version of one thing, and the newer cache version of the other thing, so it's really good to keep everything in sync, right? So here's a code sample. So here, this is actually the manifest file. It's just a JSON. So this is just the JavaScript documentation again. It actually has 2 versions, but we won't go into that. But basically, you would just increase like this if you wanted to go and grab everything. And so these are all the resources that are associated with this app. We have the HTML, we have the JS, and we have the image, right? And here is actually just the JavaScript to create a managed store. We just tell it, okay, this is the JSON, and go and look and see if we should update. So that's pretty basic, actually. We probably, like, I think it only takes about 5 minutes to take a normal thing offline, this part of it at least. Because you don't really, like, there's no question about, you know, how do I sync, right? It's when we get to the data that it gets a little more complicated. So here we have the data. So SQLite, you know, it's open source. It's similar to, you know, MySQL and stuff that a lot of people are familiar with. It's also small, so it's okay if we, like, install on people's computers. And it has all the features that we're used to. and a lot of storage. So right now you don't have to worry about how much you're storing as long as you don't go over like, I mean the hard drive has limited space, right? So don't go over the hard drive space. But besides that, because basically we think like, all right, a user when they say like, okay, let Google Gears be used on the site, they're basically saying like, okay, I'm installing this site on my computer, therefore I'm like letting it use however much space it wants to. So right now there's no limits. We could add some in the future if we need to. And the other thing is actually all of the things are subject to this same origin security model. So it's saying the local server can only grab things local to it, which why sometimes you have problems if you're trying to like write an app that uses the Ajax search API. Because in order to get that, remember you have to like do a script tag that goes and points to www.google.com and grabs that JavaScript file. So that gets a little more complicated. So then you actually have to write your app so that it doesn't rely on grabbing that file, or you have to convince like Google to let you cache their JavaScript locally. So we've yet to come up with a termination on it if that's okay. So here's a code sample for the database. You can see it's pretty simple. We just create this database. And in this example, we haven't, I guess we've already created this table called delicious, and we're going to insert some data into it. And we just have the name of what's delicious and how delicious it is. And so in this example, so SQLite has various data types, right? So it looks like we're doing a varchar and then an integer. And the next thing we do is actually just select everything from the delicious table and order it by descending with the num stars field. And here we're just outputting it into the console. So like if you're familiar with PHP, this is kind of similar to what you do in PHP. You're basically saying like, all right, while there's another row, go and get that row. And I think we should have a rs.next there.
Rs. What?
You should have an rs.next here in order to go to the next row. I think we'll fix that. So that's pretty simple as well. So here we go. So we're using the database. You already saw that. We have the slides. dbquery.html. So anytime you're making a Gears app, you should always install the tools that let you help interact with it. And a lot of people have actually written other tools. Like my friend wrote a wrapper that goes on top of the database that does a lot of common things, right? And a lot of people have written other tools that are even better for interacting with the database, because admittedly ours is a tiny bit ghetto, you know? But I use it because it does what I want. And but as I said, there's a lot of tools available. The last module that we haven't talked about is called worker pool. And so this is in order to introduce multi-threading to JavaScript. I haven't actually used it for any of my apps yet. I've only used the first two. Because worker pool isn't necessarily inherent to offline. It's just inherent to good web apps and something that we don't have a capability yet for. So they wanted to add it into Gears. Just to encourage better web apps. So if you have something that's like intensive, right, you can use the worker pool to go and do these calculations for you and come back. I think we have an example, right? So in this one, we're doing a prime finding algorithm, which is like, you know, crazy intense math. And you can just, I'm sure you guys all know what the prime finding algorithm is, so you can just imagine it in the code here. Or you can actually just look at the example and you can see the code. It's like quite a few lines of code. But in this example, so we create a worker pool, and then we say, okay, when a worker pool worker returns and sends a message, this is a function to call. And so in this case, when they send the message back with the result of the prime, it's just going to alert what the prime is. And so the next thing we do is say, all right, so here's a worker, and have it go calculate the next prime. So when that worker is done with this function, it goes and sends a message back to that callback. So you can think you can use this for like math algorithms. People have used this for encryption. You could use it if you wanted to like go and do a whole lot of server, like a whole lot of like Ajax requests in the background, right? Because you don't want to like hold up your browser while you're trying to do a sync. So that's actually kind of what it ties into the offline thing. Because sometimes, like, what if you did a crazy amount of operations while you're offline, and then you come online, and then you know your browser hangs because it's like, well, now I have to go to the server 100 times because you just said crazy in the offline mode, right? So this works it in. So they have actually their own implementation of XML HTTP requests for this, for that purpose, so that you can go and have the workers do the syncing for you offline when you're back online. There's an actual demo here. If we are online, we could play it. And it is in Japanese. Yay! Learning. Okay. But I've seen it in English, so I can translate. So this is doing it without this is doing it without gears, without the worker pool. So once we start it, you can watch what happens, and you can see this is being like updated as it goes. And then these ones are both with worker pools. So let's just try it out, and you'll get an example of the effect it has. All right, so it's going okay, and then that thing starts getting like a little bit, a little chunky, a little slow, getting caught up a bit. And the more it goes, probably the more abrupt that action will be. And now let's try worker pool. All right, smooth. So this is basically just a visual example of how it makes sure that your UI isn't tied up, especially with JavaScript. Like I've tried to do a lot of stuff with JavaScript and animation, particularly on maps, and I know that the browser has a tendency to make animation be jumpy, because whenever it starts thinking about something else, it's like, oh no, now my animation is all not smooth, right? So this is really cool, because that means we can hopefully get smoother animation while we're doing our crazy math. I just have to come up with some crazy math to do. But you could use it, like think about it with maps, you could use it for doing like geospatial operations, because those actually do use a good amount of math. Like if you have a polygon and it has like 100 vertices and you want to know if like a point is inside that polygon, don't do that. You should do that with worker pool, definitely, right? That's not something you want your user to have to wait for. So yeah, you saw that example basically. Didn't hang up the UI, pretty cool. So the other thing we do have a cool text search in the SQLite, so that makes it really nice for searching. Or Google, we always like searching. And so Google Gears is open source, and they're constantly making improvements. And so you're welcome to join and help them make improvements if you see some things that you want. And there's their website for it. Are there any questions about it before I go on? Yeah.
So how does worker pool work exactly?
So I was trying to look into details of this because I knew that somebody would ask. Worker pool doesn't have access to the DOM, so you can't use DOM methods or window methods. That's why I mentioned they have their own XML HTTP request implementation because they know people want to use that. So it does work outside of the browser somehow, like outside of that page, but I haven't found out exactly how. So I'll have to find that out. I knew that would be like the first question. Because it's kind of interesting, right? Yeah, so I'll look through, well, it's open source, right? So we can look through their code and actually see what it's doing. Any other questions? Okay.
So using this, can we save a PDF file that is not allowed to be saved?
Can you what?
Can we save a PDF file that is not allowed to be saved?
A PDF?
Yeah.
Well, it's a resource.
As it can be, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a resource, so it can be downloaded.
Right. So anything that the browser can normally get with an HTTP operation, anything it would normally get and it would respond with 200 OK, then we can cache, right?
You would do that with the local server.
Yeah. So here, let me show you an example application. Plug Gears. New. Here we go. YouTube.
Just go to the YouTube page just to get that link.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I always forget it. I know, I wrote it too. Okay, so here's my example. You guys are all familiar with Blogger. It's Google's blogging thing. So I wanted to make an offline blogger because sometimes, like when I'm really bored and I'm offline, blogging's a good thing to do, right? So you can just like rant. The airport is so boring. And so this will basically, first thing I need to do is actually log in. But this basically takes all of the Blogger functionality offline.
I believe this sample also uses the JavaScript client library for the Blogger Google Data API. So that's how she's able to pull in the Blogger, what do you do, the posts and the comments?
Yeah, I pull in all of my blogs and then all the post titles and the bodies. I don't pull in comments because we don't actually have comments enabled on our blogs. Oh, so I'm logged into, is that your blog?
Yeah, that's,
All right, we're going to look at Jason's post.
that was my simple blog.
Okay, here we go. So these are Jason's posts. So I just logged in as Jason. I'm sorry, Jason. Do you mind if I screw with your account a little bit?
No problem. I want to see my haiku. This is back from like September.
Okay, all right. So we'll just do edit. Would you like
Oh yeah, this one brought up Trevor.
Trevor, you are a star.
This one was about you. I wrote it in like September.
So you can actually see you can see the status messages I put up here to let you know what's going on.
I was implying that Nellie ate you. Nellie is a dog that sits in our office.
Very nice. What's your introduction here? This is all about Nellie?
Yeah.
You have a blog about the dog in our office. Okay.
I don't have a blogger, so I needed a sample blog.
Okay. So you see what this thing does is that it goes out and tries to get stuff from Blogger, and when we're online, it goes and grabs stuff and puts it in the local database. And so then like we might want to like create a new post. So let's actually work offline. So if you want to test, that's something you should know. If you want to test out offline stuff, instead of like screwing with the wireless and like unplugging stuff, just go to File, Work Offline. Another thing to do is disable the cache to make sure that you're really seeing what it would look like if I'm offline. So let's do Create New Post. I'll save as draft so that we don't publish. So Nellie has to be about Nellie is so cool, but not a very good programmer. Okay.
You're not a very good speller.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do save draft. All right, so you see now it's yellow. So what's happened is that I've actually saved it right now into the local database. So first I saved it into the local database and I give it an ID, right? And then I try, and so you can see it says attempting to retrieve post from the Blogger service. When that message doesn't go away, that means it doesn't succeed. And so I save this in the local database, I give an ID, and then I try and save it through the Blogger service. So right now it's not able to, so it's going to remain yellow. However, if I go and do unclick the work offline, the way I've implemented it is like, I think I have it like every 30 seconds or a minute or so, it will go through it basically looks in the database. And in the database, I mark things as like synced or not synced or like must save, right? And it goes and looks, oh, it just worked. Okay. So it went and it found this, and it found that it had to go and save this. And so then it made a request to Blogger, came back, and it was like, okay, cool, this is synced now, updated the local database, and now we have the information about like when it was published.
Why does it say draft?
Because I saved it as a draft.
Oh.
Do you want me to actually like post on your Blogger? We can do
It's a
this.
sample blog.
All right.
Do whatever you want.
Okay. I might like badmouth you. So that's like the basic architecture there. And then we have just a little diagram that shows exactly what's going on here.
What would have happened if I had posted that blog while you were working offline and I changed the database?
If you had like put a post in there
Yeah.
while I was working offline, so what would have happened is that so when I get online, right, and as soon as it's able to, okay, so this is what happens, right? It goes through when it goes and successfully gets a bunch of new posts, it deletes everything in its database that is marked as synced, okay? And then it replaces it with all of the new data it got from there. If it still has something marked in its database as synced, it's not going to get rid of that until we've marked it as synced, right? So that's how we make sure that we can get the newest data but not lose any data. So all that would happen is that I would get the new stuff from you as soon as I got online.
But timestamp. Yeah, I was wondering that too.
The timestamp?
Yeah.
So right now I just take the timestamp of when it actually got posted to the service. You could actually like use like the date field in SQL and store when you created it, but the times in Blogger are really funky anyway, so I didn't bother to worry about that. So this is what we have, right? We have the Blogger, the JavaScript client library, and this is basically like our server interaction. And then we have the local database and local server. And so when we get the post, the first thing we do, so as I said, I always go to my local database first, right? So this is the local database, the little yellow thing. So I go there, and so you can see the thing for that is I select from my entries table where it's equal to that blog, And where the sync state, I have a sync state for must delete because I don't want to show people entries that they've marked as delete because you can delete stuff offline as well. So where the sync state is not equal to must delete, and then I order by the sync state just so I put those yellow ones at the top so you know everything at the top is stuff that hasn't been synced and is yellow. So the next thing we do, after we've gone and done everything from local host and updated that, then we try and go to the server. So the first thing we do, this is a little trick, and it actually is a good trick. If you actually want to be able to display a message to the user and say, you're probably online right now, you're probably offline, instead of trying to do like a complex operation on your server, all you want to do is set up like a 1K file on your server that has like, well, nothing in it, and then just try and do an XML-HR to that, and if it comes back successful, well, that means you're online right now, right? So some people do this like as often as like, every few seconds if they're really insistent on being able to tell people, are you online, are you offline? I don't really agree with this because I think, like, as far as I can tell, you can be online 1 millisecond and offline the next millisecond, so never trust anything completely, right? But anyway, so we ping a file on the server and to see if it thinks we're online. So if we think we're online, then we're like, all right, so we'll give it a shot, right? Then we'll go and try and make a request to the client library. And then, so now that we've done ping the server, now we have to make a call to the client library, and this is just the function in the client library is getting the blog post feed. And then what we do is that, this is what we're talking about, you're asking like what we do when we come back. So we delete everything for that blog where the sync state is equal to nothing to do. So that basically means, all synced. And then we insert everything that we got. And then we update our UI again. So that's basically the flow. Yeah?
Does Google News work for mobile web applications?
So none that I know, but I believe that's another thing for Android.
That would be pretty useful. More than
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, so I think right now the installer is platform based, and so of course there's Windows and Mac installers and Linux, but I don't know for sure if we have any mobile installers yet, but I'm sure that we're working on something.
Yeah, so I would just pay attention to Android and see if that's something they're looking at. I'm sure they are.
Is that me? Is that one about me?
What?
It says I could neither confirm or deny.
Maybe. Did you just blog this right now? Wow, it's crazy. Okay. So the final thing I have a really simple example, and this is the thing that we're going to do as a code lab. So I could either like incrementally do the code or just kind of look through the code and see what it looks like. That might be easier. All right. You could do the code lab independently though. All right, so let's see. Memorize my URLs.
Or go to YouTube.
Oh no, but I just made this like 2 seconds ago. Oh no, I know it. No. Getting closer. Yeah. Very nice. I have a special part of my memory for memorizing URLs. So this is really simple. So it just displays events now, and it shows them. So what this is doing is going to my Google Calendar, and it's loading in the Google Calendar feed. And then, so this is actually probably the most useful thing you can do, is actually an offline calendar. Because when you wake up in the morning and then you don't have your internet, and then you're like, well, I guess I'll just have to sleep in because I clearly have nothing to do. So this is actually like if you guys actually publish your calendar, or you can just publish it as like free busy or whatever. This might be a really quick app to make if you have that problem of waking up and suddenly not having internet. Happens all the time. So let's go to work offline, and everyone cross your fingers. Yay! It still worked, and it was like instant. So remember, as soon as I got all this stuff, I went and stored it in the local database. And then as soon as I have a local database, I can just retrieve it immediately from there. So it's actually a lot faster. So let's prove that this is actually offline, though. So let's go to YouTube and see what happens if we reload. Your thing is really bad at working offline, let me tell you.
Image cache.
Yeah. Let's go to a random URL.
Like
Ha! Told you.
a, like a bad Chuck Norris joke. He has internet all the time.
All right, so that's what you would see if you went to a normal page. So let's just look at the actual code here. I try to make it like as bare bones as possible, right? Okay. So let me maybe show you increase that.
It's quite, yeah.
Yeah, let me resize it a little bit. Okay, cool. All right, so the UI is really simple, right? We just say, at the very bottom, right, there's the UI. We have a header, we've got this little div that's going to hold everything, okay? So then on the body onload, we call this load function here. And so in the load, the first thing we do is set up some gear stuff. We set up a store, and we set up a database. So set up store, that's our local store again. So here we have it. All we do is so you have to include the gears file in order to access all the gears functions. So we store this current location, which a shortcut to that is just location.pathname. And then we store the gears init file. And that's all we need. If we had CSS or images, we could also throw those into the array. And then we create the local server, if we can, open it, and then just capture those page files. So that's pretty simple. You can pretty much just copy and paste the same code for whatever you're doing. The next thing we want to do is set up the database. So this is just creating the database and opening it, and then creating a table called events. And here I have a title and a date. And for this purposes, I made them both varchars. You might want to make the date like actually some sort of like date time object. Google Docs really needs to get on gears quick. All right. So the next thing we do is display events. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like as soon as I load the page, the first thing I want to do is actually check my local database, because remember, it's really quick, right? So if nothing there, it's no big deal. I haven't wasted any time. So I'm going to select everything from events and iterate through it. And if I have anything, we'll get a list of all of the fields. So this is just a shortcut to get the first field, the second field. There's a couple other things you can do field by name, if you want to say like field by name, title, field by name, date, right? And then we'll just output it to the UI. So if we don't have anything, that's fine. The next thing we do is call a function called getEvents. So getEvents uses the JSON P thing that I talked about, where we append JavaScript containing the data to our page. So we create a script tag, right? We set the source of that script tag to our public calendar feed. Shh. I'm not angry. And then we say, all right, we want this to be the JSON in scripts, so that it's going to be the JavaScript data that we can read in. And this is a callback that you're going to call if you come back successfully. If you don't come back, that'll never be called. And then we just append that script tag to the body so that it tries to evaluate it. And if it comes back, it calls this list events function, right? First thing we do is delete our table, because now we've got fresh data, so we want to get rid of all that old and antiquated data. In this case, we're only doing a read-only example, so we don't have to worry about all that like syncing with insertion. I actually have an example of doing calendar with insertion as well, if you're interested in that. So then we just iterate through the JSON object, and we get the title and the date for each one, and then we just do an insert into the events table with the title and the date.
That's the local database.
This is the local database, yes. So it's db.execute. So that db is a local database object. So anytime you see that, db.execute.
Just close it.
I thought okay. And then we just display the events again. So that's pretty simple. So that's kind of like the core of a read-only example. If you're actually able to create events, you need to have like your function that actually go to the server and create the events, and then you'd want to deal with syncing as well.
There are a number of libraries that are built on top of Google Gears. I think Pamela mentioned that. I think one of the ones that I've seen is like Dojo offline. So Dojo is a well-known JavaScript toolkit in general, and then they have this offline library that they built with Google Gears, and it's really nice. So you can just with a couple of script includes at the top of your page, you just they have like a number of little functions. One of the ones that I like a lot is like a little widget that all you do is point it to a div on the page, just an empty div, and when the script runs, it'll add like a little indicator to tell you when you're online and offline. So it has like a little green light if you're online, a little red light, so you don't have to.
Right. And it probably does the technique I talked about with the pinging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
And there's a number of other little functions I can't remember at the moment, but all kinds of neat stuff out there.
So this is actually Google Gears. It's pretty interesting to use, and I'd encourage you to try it out. Like for the all-nighter, is take some app that you think would be highly valuable to you offline. Like Blackboard would be awesome. I was helping my friend out with their Blackboard servers last night, and that thing was just ridiculously unresponsive, right? But sometimes like you just really need information about your classes and stuff like that. The other thing you do is, I haven't mentioned, so how many people know Greasemonkey? Okay, so does anyone want to explain it?
It's JavaScript on your web page, like to do special things. So you get rid of that.
Right. Okay. So basically, it's a Firefox plugin, right? And what it does, it puts a little monkey in the corner. Do you have Greasemonkey on here? I just like it because I like having the little monkey in the corner of my screen.
Press the green button.
Green? There's no green button.
On the left. No, not that one. That one.
Oh.
There it is.
All right. There's a little monkey. Yay. What Greasemonkey scripts do you have?
Just the one that Arne made for the groups.
Oh, okay. So if I go to groups, do you think it'll work?
Yeah.
Let's try that one.
So.
Oh. Take groups offline.
So one of our colleagues made a little Greasemonkey script. Go to view all. Made a little Greasemonkey script to help us out, so we're in charge in developer programs. We're in charge of like supporting the Google groups for our products. So Pamela mans the Maps API group, and I map the Open Social and Google Mashup edit groups and so on. And so it was always really annoying when you have like thousands of posts. In this case, this one has how many posts? It has quite a few. Well, not in this particular form, but in another one. And so it comes in when you're also collaborating on posts with other engineers. It's hard to keep track of just who's answering what. So what's nice about this is that it tells you if you're the last one to reply, or if you're not interested, so you can ignore threads. And so all of these things, the colored titles and the little ignore refresh buttons, those are all being added after the page loads by Greasemonkey.
Right, but then, so can you explain how it uses Gears? It uses database?
This one does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you explain how it does?
I don't know too much about it. I do know that, so for example, when you click ignore, you see that when we popped up, so every time you load, I think it'll automatically look to see if it's not ignored or whatever. But it saves the information, and if you like ignore a thread, it'll save it using Gears into the database, so that when you pull it up, and it sees that that the timestamp is the same in both the database and the actual groups page, it'll say, oh, well, I remember that this one is ignored, but he doesn't want to.
So you can use Gears for more than just taking stuff offline. You could just use it to take advantage of, like, well, wouldn't it be really useful to always have a persistent database, right?
So Pamela actually had a little use case for her blog Gears one. So apparently it's like a really big pain to like delete entries and blog or something.
Yeah, it is.
So with so you have to do it like one at a time.
Yeah.
One entry at a time. So with blog Gears, you can actually like use checkboxes, just like select multiple posts at once and say delete. And then when you sync it, it deletes it all.
Right.
For you.
Well, I don't have checkboxes, but the thing is, so what I do, because when I was creating blog Gears, like I was creating tons of test posts, right? So I ended up having like 100 posts. I was like, oh, I really need to delete these. But every time you delete, it goes to server, does a delete, right? So I would always click on file, work offline, and then I just go delete, 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 pick all of them, right? And then I go to file, work online, and let it just sync all the changes to the server. So it was a really quick way to delete without, like, that's what I'm talking about, being able to do like those, bulk actions without having to wait for every individual action to go to the server. That's pretty useful. So the other thing that has been done, we call it Greasemonkey since it's Gears plus Greasemonkey, and this is the little logo I made for it. Isn't it cute? It's actually my Gtalk icon. So he made a Wikipedia offline, and we'll just install it to your thingy, right?
Okay.
And he also wrote an article about it. So, and he would love to see more people do Greasemonkey scripts, and they can be pretty useful. The only thing to know about Greasemonkey, it is only Firefox. But assuming that nobody uses IE, then that's fine.
What about Safari?
Right. So let's download it. All right. Install it. Let's go to Wikipedia. Okay, so somebody named their favorite Wikipedia topic. You're okay.
Google.
All right, so I'm assuming that you desperately want to read about William Shakespeare when you're offline. Yeah, every day. That's how I just go to sleep at night. So let's say now we want to take this offline. It's loading right now. Offline. I think he changed the UI slightly. Okay. Alright, trust it. Okay, so here we go. So we get this little thingy that says cache page. And so then we also get in the sidebar, save pages. So then like when you're offline, you can just go to, one of your pages and see what else you have saved. So let's do a more exciting topic. Maybe cheetahs. No, not cheetahs, no, hyenas. Hyenas are really interesting. No, they really are. I'm not going to go into the details because it's not safe for work, but they're pretty cool. So you should definitely check out that later when you're bored and offline. And look at that. Look, you can spell their name with one of those funny characters. You guys see that? I mean, how cool is that? So yeah, so then the cool thing is, so let's work offline. And refresh page, still there. Let's prove that we're offline. Google, do you have Google Cache? No. All right, cool. So then, I can be like, sweet. So this is a great way, because you know what I love to do on the bus right now is I always just go on my BlackBerry and I do Wikipedia article jumping, right? So I read one Wikipedia article. So every day I'll pick a different Wikipedia topic to start on and then see where it takes me. And there's some pretty interesting stuff, right? So this is really cool. Just a bunch of stuff, cache it, and then when you're at the airport, you're like, sweet. I always wanted to learn about hyenas, and now I can.
Or William Shakespeare.
Right, but see, the good thing about this script is a great example. I'm never going to read about it. But this is a great example of how to take an app that you didn't create offline using Greasemonkey. Since Greasemonkey is able to operate on the page that you're running it on, so it's able to do some stuff to it.
So theoretically, if there was a link to William Shakespeare on the hyena page, would you be able to click on it, or is it a different kind of link?
It doesn't go out, and so this is only caching all the stuff that's on the page and all the images.
Right, but he's saying that if you had already
If
cached
you
the
already
William
saved,
Shakespeare.
Oh.
you already cached the other page. Could you
Well, let's do it with wait, are we offline right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's do an example. So hyena has carnivore, okay? So we'll cache the page, and then
Wonderful topic.
let's go back to hyenas. All right, first let's go to Africa and see what happens. All right, Africa, not there. All right, carnival is there. So it's just the URL. It's not a special URL because all it's doing is literally making all the resources at that URL available. So that's pretty sweet. So you could theoretically possibly write a Greasemonkey script that would work on Blackboard.
So it's really not hard to see why Google Gears is really awesome, and the type of things that you'll be able to do on the web, or off the web as it were, in just a limited amount of time, as soon as more and more people take advantage of it.
You got to read about that. Okay, so any questions?
So Greasemonkey itself, the script which color coded everything.
Yeah.
Where did it store the information as to which post was color coded and what? Because the page is not going to be the same.
So I think he
they
probably stored the URLs in the database. Wait, let's just see if we can look at the code, right?
I don't know if it actually stores the color in the database.
No, as in.
I think every time you go to the page when you're.
This one just uses Greasemonkey, right?
This one actually uses Gears also.
Yeah.
This one will remember if you've ignored a thread, for example.
Where's your?
But in terms of the other colors like green says that I'm the last one. So you see all the ones that are green are the ones that say Jason over here because that's the last one that I replied. So I think it actually goes in every time.
Okay, so let's see what's on it's in the table here. We have ID, class, and timestamp. So that's probably the last time it looked at it, right? To see if you had responded to it. Then we also have, look, we've got threads here as well. So threads. So it actually uses gears quite a bit. So I think it needs to check and see like when's the last time. So probably it stores like when's the last time it checked out a thread. Because the whole point of this is to see if you've responded, right? So you need to know like, okay, because the threads, links to the threads remain the same, but you might have responded. So it says, all right, so I checked this thread at so-and-so time, stored in the database. And so then when the page reloads, you can look at your database and be like, okay, well, I should probably go check this thread again, right? And then, update it. But you're welcome to read through this. This is probably a little complicated. I recommend the article first that Ben wrote about the Greasemonkey script for Wikipedia, and he also has a video up on YouTube about it. All right. Anything else?